A few of you guys have asked me what my personal settings are for FC25. That could be for career mode or just the general gameplay. So in this video, I am going to go through all of the settings. It will be somewhat boring, but I'm going to go through all of the settings that I look to use in order to try and replicate the most realistic parameters for FC25. Now, you would also notice that I have a box in the corner. I have recently moved houses, and the new office needs some work. So excuse the box, excuse the stuff that you see in the background. It will improve as 2025 rolls around and progresses, of course. Anyway, so back to this. The preset will be set to competitive. I think I'm quite decent at, well, FIFA and FC, so I am looking for a bit more of a competitive edge, but I do understand if you want to just have it on the normal thing. But with the competitive preset, I should say, it does allow you to unlock and utilize certain other features that I tend to use on a consistent basis. Now, a lot of these settings I do tend to leave on just what EA intends us to play the game with. I don't really like changing too much about it. There are a few things like the time finishing that I will prefer to have on, and a few other things that I will switch and alternate every now and then, but I don't really like changing too much about it. I mean, if it's a big problem, I will look to tinker with it, but otherwise you will see a lot of it is just what I leave it as. Now, in terms of the defending, now I know that there's 3 different types of defending. There's tactical, advanced, and legacy. Now, up until like 3 years ago, I didn't know that there was variations to the defense, and I just played on whatever EA had set it to. Now, I'm pretty sure that advanced defending is a somewhat more newer feature. It was either implemented like in FC24, maybe FIFA 23. I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that. But I have gotten the swing of like what advanced defending can do for you and what it can't do for you and how it can expose you. But I have gotten a bit better at it, and I like the idea of having like these layers of difficulty that it's on you as the player. If you make a mistake, you open up that space, and the CPU or the opposition player can go ahead and exploit that. But if you are more savvy, if you're smarter, if you read things better, you might be able to intercept play, you might be able to break up the opposition attacks, and I quite like having that level of difficulty on me as the user in a way. Now, the last thing that I have changed on this screen is the player lock. Now, I've recently started teaching myself how to use this. It's quite difficult to get the hang of, or for me anyway. Maybe there's some of you guys who are just absolute pros, but for me, I find it quite difficult, like clicking in L3 and R3 and then switching to a player and then having him run whilst your player's still controlling the ball, and it can be quite difficult. But once you start getting the hang of it, you can definitely with ease outdo the opposition backline with having an extra player running around, pulling players out of position, or making runs in behind and then looking to release the ball in time. So it can be quite good if you get the hang of it, but when you are learning like yours truly, it can be quite difficult. But for the time being, I do have that on. Now, in terms of the match settings, I normally play on 4-minute halves. I've recently switched that to 5-minute halves, as I've discovered that this game is a lot harder than what it used to be. So I do want a bit more time just to either improve or just have a bit more time in game. And the difficulty level, of course, with the normal matches out of career mode, it will be set to legendary. But even in career mode, I play on legendary now because I think that the ultimate difficulty can be very, very, very challenging, especially if you play certain formations with certain tactics. So I've dropped it down to legendary, and it provides me with a satisfactory level of competition. I'm not getting blown out every game, not losing 4 or 5-0, but I am, losing the odd game here and there. And then when I play on like ultimates, we will talk about other game settings just now, but when I play on ultimate, I do tend to think that the game just hates me and it just wants to end my life. But anyways, you know what? We dropped it down to legendary and we're a lot happier now. So competitive mode, I have put that off, but the player-based difficulty, I have put that on. So if you're up against Liverpool, Mohamed Salah, the likes of Trent Alexander-Arnold, they'll be pulling the strings, they'll be doing their things, and it will just somewhat separate them from the other players. It will show you that Salah and Trent are really the players that you need to keep an eye on. They are the players that you need to make sure that you are on your best form when they're in possession of the ball. So I quite like that idea. Competitive mode, I used to play with that on FC24 and I think FIFA 23. I could be wrong, but definitely FC24. I had that on, and it was a breeze. Now it's much, much, much harder. So I have that all for the time being. If I improve, I'll put that on. But otherwise, everything else here is on what it was supposed to be. I do like the fact that they've introduced the pre-match intros, the lineups, and all that good stuff. That's cool, but I have that as opt-in because I don't always like watching that. If I want to, maybe for a big game, just to build up the atmosphere, I'd hold down the square button and I can then watch the intro, whether it's a Champions League final, an FA Cup final, maybe the final game of the season, you're trying to get into the top 4, win the championship. Either way, it could be cool for building a bit more of an atmosphere to your game, but I don't like it on all the time. Rightio, so for the camera settings, a lot of people have asked me what camera do you use? Now, I use the legacy camera. I don't know if they're just getting confused with the angles that I use for the tactics videos, but generally speaking, when I'm playing the game, I use legacy, and I've set this to legacy for basically everything. And then for the custom camera settings, I've left it on default. I don't need to change too much about it. I'm quite happy with the camera settings as they are. Now, the other thing that I have changed is the power shot zoom. I've put that off because I remember trying the power shot for the first time in FC24, and every time the camera would zoom in, my whole focus would switch to, I'm no longer taking a shot, and what the hell is happening here, because the whole thing is zooming in, and I don't know, I just can't get the hang of the idea, or I can't grasp the fact that there's a zooming in camera because I'm doing a power shot. I would rather just do the power shot without any zoom. So I have that off, and it's worked wonders. I score so many power shots now, it's unfriggin' believable. For the visuals, I normally go with the player name bar, so that bit at the bottom. I don't like having anything really above the players apart from the little indicator to show which player I am. I know there are a few of you guys that might like that, and having the bar above their heads and maybe their number or their name. I just think it clutters the screen. I'd rather have it at the bottom. That way I can see how much power I'm using when needed, maybe a free kick, or maybe just looking to have a power shot, something like that, and that does the trick and the job for me. Some people don't even play with these things on. That is absolutely insanity at its finest, if you ask me. But yes, everything else I have left on. Now, I do know that certain people have said turn off the playstyle overhead indicators. It slows down the game, or it will actually speed up the game or improve the game, because when they show up, it slows down the game, as well as, you know, having the, what is it called? The frost, not the frost, the other thing. I don't know the names to these things, the hypermotion insight overlays. Now, I have seen that has somewhat lagged the game a bit, which I don't really understand, because it's such a big function or a big feature. You would think that EA would have made sure that it runs smoothly when it's displaying. I still have that on because I quite like the idea of these cool little graphic pop-ups and all that good stuff, but I have that on. But otherwise, pretty much everything else on normal. Now, for the audio, there are certain things that I have off for recording purposes, being the music. If I record with music and I put it out on YouTube, I'll get copyright strikes and there would be no more Brom Squad Gaming channel. So I normally play with the music off. And then also for the commentary volume, I put that off as well, because if I'm recording a career mode and I'm talking, I don't want Martin Tyler and I don't even know the commentators from the recent games. I don't want them talking above me. I'm the most important person. I'm trying to dictate the story here and set the tone for you guys watching. And then the last thing that I will also change is the stadium ambiance. It can be a bit too loud at times, so I quite like putting it on 5. That more or less balances it out with my voice over it and all that good stuff. But again, otherwise, everything is on the normal things, the normal settings, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Okay, now a big new feature has been the gameplay type. Do you play on classic? Do you play on simulation? Do you use custom sliders? That has been a big thing that a lot of people have been speaking about. Now, I've frequently said in the comment section, if you find the comments, you might see me, you may have seen me say it, but I alternate between classic and simulation. Before this last update, I was consistently playing on simulation. I thought that simulation was the best, and then after the update, I found it quite hard and difficult to try and break down teams, because they would just sit back and compact themselves, and it was very hard to break down trying to string together passes. I haven't tried it since. I mean, I've been playing on classic for the last week or 2 weeks, and it has done a great job for me. I normally use wind effects on medium. It tends to balance itself out quite nicely. Look, this feature I think is the most useless piece of shit feature that they've added to the game. It's a classic EA thing, where the first time they try something, it's really bad, and then in that year, when they get their feedback and everything like that, they tend to improve it for the next game. So I am hoping, because this is a cool feature, but they've executed it like raw anyways. So I have this off, because in my 10-15 years of watching football, I have never seen the ball move like that with light rain or a little bit of snow. If it's torrential rain and the pitch is almost drenched, yes, the ball can move like that. But very rare does that happen. I like the idea of changing the ball physics. That's a great idea. But the fact that I would be holding down the pass button, X button, for 5 bars of power and the ball might roll 2 yards is BS. I get the ball skidding across the surface, maybe a few shots alternate, maybe a few passes do change, but with the frequency at which it happens is just bullshit to me. So I have that off, and I would probably say the same would be for simulation. I would have it on medium wind effects and then off for the weather effects, because the way that the pitch just changes is crazy to me. Like it's not a realistic thing. It's just not. So I've had my rant now, where we're going to progress on. Now for the CPU sliders, I tend to play on either dynamic or possibly this one, tactical, but I like dynamic. I like the fact that there can be a lot of variation between playing the same team over and over again. I like the idea that they might even be able to adapt to the previous time that you had played them, and the fact that they will always try and create a different game plan, more or less sticking to their tactical outlet, but there will be a different game plan. They're not always going to use, if you're playing West Ham, they're not consistently going to use Jared Bowen down the right hand side. They might switch it up and use Paquetá or Kudus down the left or through the middle and try and, you know, beat you that way or some way, shape or form. It's not always going to be long ball, switch pass to Bowen, and hopefully he runs and beats your fullback. So I like the dynamic approach. It does create more variation compared to the tactical one, but dynamic tends to do the trick and really does keep me on I don't know, just with previous FIFAs or FCs, there's been a way that you learn how the CPU works, and then you find out these little tricks of how to beat it all the time and prevent things from happening. Whereas with this, it does make sure that you're switched on, you're alert, and you're focused. And then for the rules, I have it just on its base, on, and then handball on for the goalkeepers. Of course, they're allowed to touch the ball. I have tinkered with it every now and then, playing with, you know, the actual rules of handballs, but quite often you'll see the ball hit your player's hand, you have no control over that, and you give away a penalty. Now, I know you can also have that as penalties would be off, but it can be quite frustrating when free kicks around the box are basically penalties, especially if you have Trent Alexander-Arnold or Bruno Fernandes or one of those players that are really like up there when it comes to their overall free kick ratings, and they just tend to ping them into the back of the net. So I have this on just goalkeepers can damn near hold the ball, and everybody else, it's fine. And then lastly is the graphics mode. I just have this on enhanced visuals. This does something with the ray tracing, and the PS5 does its thing, and it just makes everything look much more I don't know, like it just makes everything look better. Okay, god damn it, it makes things look nice. So when entering the career mode scene, this little menu will pop up before every save, and it's for you to put it up and set up your career mode with how you want it to play out. So for the transfers, I have this on active. I would normally have the first window off, but there is a bug in the system, and I haven't really tried it since the game first came out, but there has been a bug. Let me know if it's gone. But if you put the first window off, any potential transfers or notifications for a transfer don't really ping through, and you don't realize that you've got a message and you try and sell this player or that player, and then you miss out on transfers, or a player gets bought that you were trying to sign. So I normally have this on active, but if you have the live start point, this is normally off, and then you get to start in the January window and buy your first few players. But nonetheless, if you're starting from the get-go, if you're starting from the beginning, just have it on active, buy your players or don't buy players, and that way it doesn't break the notification system as a whole. Now in terms of the player difficulty, I spoke about this, but I normally play on legendary now. Every now and then I might switch it to if I am looking for more of a challenge, maybe for a cup final or just a Champions League final, I might put it on that difficulty slightly higher, the ultimate difficulty, just to make sure it's a bit more of a challenge. But normally legendary is the one. Hopefully I get good enough to consistently just play at ultimate, because it's a bit of an ego thing. It's a bit of an ego thing saying I play on ultimate, but now I have to play on legendary. So it is what it is, but you know what, it's okay. Legendary is it's good enough. It's good enough for now, and it's nothing to be ashamed of. Half length is at 5 minutes, just like with before, as well as for the youth tournaments. Although I don't really play them, that is also on 5 with a full potential. You want to play with the youth players at their max. Now we have already discussed the next few settings, but for the simulation settings, I have it on classic, medium, and off. And every now and then, if I am looking to play on simulation, I will put it on that with the same wind effects as well as the weather effects. And the same can also be said said for the CPU sliders, with it being set to dynamic. Now for the training, I have gone and implemented a more realistic training recovery rate. I like that idea. I like that certain players recover a lot slower and certain players are a lot faster, and the realistic aspect does tend to kick in quite nicely. Now I don't like playing the training drills, so I like that they have added the feature of you can just switch it off, which I do, and then you can just simulate them and you'll still get the benefits of doing the training and, you know, grinding that out. So that's more or less for me. I'm trying to play games. I'm trying to win Champions Leagues. I'm not trying to goddamn see if a player can pass the ball into a bucket 6 times in a row. Okay, and then the final big set of changes that I do tend to make, of course, transfers. We have already spoken about that. You can set that to active or first window closed, or you can give yourself a transfer embargo, all that good stuff, but just leave it on active if you don't want to break the game and you want to receive your good little notifications to say this player's for sale, this player's going, this player's coming in, yada yada yada. But the transfer negotiations, I have this on realistic. That means that you're not going to have Chelsea selling to Man United and vice versa. Now we have seen recently Mason Mount going from Chelsea to Man United, but those were dire straits. Consistently, you don't really see a Spurs player going to Arsenal or a Liverpool player going to Man United and vice versa. So you want to still have that. The transfer approaches should also be set to strict, and this will also help with creating those realistic parameters. And also, when it comes to the transfer fees, you're not going to go and sign Mbappe for 100 million. You're going to have to go out and spend, I think, 200 million. So it's one of those situations, and I quite like that, to be fair. I want to try and create these nice, fair, you know, structures in place for a career mode. The scouting should be set to on, player searches can be on. Now for the scouting for scouting of star players, because they're so well known, it does not really tend to take as long as the lesser known players. So I have that on fast, with the scouting of normal players set to normal, or the general players set to normal. That tends to do the more realistic trick. And then lastly is the general settings. So for the board expectations, I have this on strict. Now I do know that there have been a few people in the past, probably me included, that have complained about the fact that you can just so easily get fired, but I like having it on strict, so it does make sure that I am switched on. It does mean that I'm trying to meet the board's requirements on a consistent basis, otherwise you could lose your job. Now I do know that if you are winning the league and all this stuff, you shouldn't be able to lose your job because you didn't qualify for the round of 16 for the FA Cup. That's crazy, that's BS. But I do like still having it on strict, making sure that I am somewhat keeping within the limits of a real life system, because of course if you don't meet the requirements of the board or the team owner, probably going to find yourself sacked. The European competitions will be on, the financial takeover can be off, but it's quite nice to have added that in if you are trying to create a scenario. That's cool. And the currency does also add to that realistic aspect. Now I've selected Man United for this potential thing, so they will use sterling. Now if you're using a German club or a Spanish club or a French league club, use euros, or you could even use dollars, but I would mainly use dollars for the MLS or maybe slightly lesser leagues, but sterling or euros is the way to go. And there we go, people. Those are my settings that I use for FC25 for career mode or just the general gameplay. I do hope you have enjoyed this video. Please don't forget to like that, smash that like button down below. You're liking for my goddamn personal settings. Anyways, I do hope I have answered a lot of your questions, and maybe you guys might like my way of playing, but if there's something I've missed, maybe you can say down below in the comment section, Brom Squad, you need to try put this on, or you need to have this on semi-assisted or fully assisted or something like that. I may have glossed over it, but the headering, I've struggled with the headering, so I've recently switched that to manual. And that has tended to somewhat help me a decent amount when it comes to like putting the ball in the back of the net. So I may have glossed over that. I do apologize, but I have that on manual. So if anybody can help me out, if you've gone to this part of the video, please, if you can help me out, please. I'm struggling. Should it be on manual? Should it be on assisted? What's the general consensus for it? Anyways, until the next time, until the next one, I hope you have a smashing goddamn day, and I'm out of here. Peace. Peace. What you wanna be, now others wanna see. What you wanna be.